work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, yeah.
Hello, friends. Shout out if you're watching us on YouTube, IG, Facebook, and Twitter. And shout out if you're listening to us on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google, and more. Welcome to another episode of Career Exploration Saturday. I'm your host, Ebony Tyler. I have real conversations with real people about real jobs. So shout out to Liberated Success board member Dina Cox for welcoming this week's guest, Melissa Madzel, to our Liberated Success family. Melissa is the Managing Director of Equity Initiatives at Koya Partners. She is a boss in the nonprofit world. She's helping organizations find their next leader, and I'm learning so much from Melissa, and I think you will enjoy our conversation. All right, let's jump right in. Good afternoon. Welcome, Melissa. Welcome, Melissa Madzel, to Career Exploration Saturday. I am so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ebony. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
So, start all the conversations. Tell us about who 16-year-old Melissa was.
So 16-year-old Melissa had it together. I was one of those high schoolers where school went really well for me. I had a lot of friends. I was really active in my after-school activities. I babysat on the side to make money. I was in student council, and I wanted to be a therapist. That was my big career plan. I wanted to be a therapist and help kids. And honestly, I was 16, 17. My junior and senior years of high school were some of the best years of my life because I was having a lot of fun and really successful. And so then that was all what made it really hard when I got to college and things didn't work out the way that I thought that they would.
Tell us. So you were at
Northeastern
University.
Yeah, so I went to Northeastern, and when I went there, I think it wasn't the most welcoming place for Black students at the time. I don't know, I have no idea what it's like now. I hope now it's better. I believe that it could be and should be better now. But at the time when I got there, it wasn't the most welcoming place. And more than anything, I didn't choose the right school. I didn't have anybody who really understood how to do a college search in my life when I was in high school. So I thought I knew what I wanted, and I made this big commitment to go to Northeastern without looking at very many colleges. And so once I got there, the school was really big. It was, I think, 25,000 students when I got there. And I came from a relatively small school in high school. And so I just got lost a little bit until I found my people. And I didn't really know what major to be. I thought that I wanted to do one thing. And once I started doing it, I realized I didn't like it that much. And so all of these things were, it was hard. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I didn't have it all together. So that was really scary and really complicated. And in retrospect, I really wish somebody knew or had the I guess, skills in college searching to help me try out a few different schools. And I think that's why what you do, Ebony, is so important. Really. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think that was missing in my college search process.
You didn't consider maybe transferring?
So I did. I actually thought very seriously about transferring. And then ultimately what I ended up doing was once I looked at transferring for 2 years, and then I realized I could graduate early. And so I graduated early. I did change majors. Yeah, I did, exactly. Yeah, I changed majors a few times. And I also found my people within Northeastern. It's a huge, huge school. So I became an RA, and I got to be friends with a bunch of the other RAs. There was a class about race and sociology. It was specifically about race and sociology and hate crimes. And I got really connected with the professor of that class. He became a really great mentor for me. And I think he was the first person that really helped me to see that the things that I was interested in were things that made sense, and he really drew me out. And so I got really involved with him, and I became a teaching assistant for him. And then I settled on a major that was really exciting for me. I settled on human services, which was a great major for me. So all of those things, like, it was fine in the end. But what I did after college was that I went to an organization, and I did community service. And it was an AmeriCorps program called City Year. And I did that. And that was what I should have done before college. I should have taken a year. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you two things. Tell us what an RA is, because I think that some kids may not know, parents may not know, and I feel like there's money involved in that.
There is money involved in that. You're exactly right. So an RA is a resident assistant. And that's the person when in college, in the dorms, there are students who are there who are often a little bit older, who work for the college. And so they take responsibility for keeping the students organized, for helping to solve problems for the students. And at Northeastern, at least, it paid for my housing. It was very significant. I lived in Boston for free for 4 years because I was an RA, or for 3 years because I was an RA. And I think I would imagine that any school that has dorms has something like that. And then when I went to graduate school later, I did something similar, and that paid for my housing, and I got paid on top of that when I was in graduate school. Like, that was my grad school job.
Look at that. So the college that you were attending was paying you too. Look at that.
Yeah.
So I had a question down, which was, like, I know you're passionate about social justice work, and I wanted to ask you, was there an incident that happened? But you talked a little bit about working with that professor. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like in that class?
That's a great question that nobody has ever asked me. Those are both good questions that no one's ever asked me. When it comes to social justice, generally, there was never been a one instance that has made me passionate about social justice issues. It is the day after day seeing the parts of my life where I've had a lot of privilege, and recognizing that what comes with privilege is great responsibility. And so I feel a great sense of responsibility to support others and lift the voices of others. And at the same time, I also recognize the places in my life where I have experienced racism, where I have experienced sexism, where I've experienced homophobia, and where the systems just need to be better. And so I take a lot of ownership on making systems better in the way that I can. You know, I'm not an activist in the sense that I have a lot of friends who are activists who get themselves arrested on purpose while they're protesting, who know the science and the strategy behind protesting and activism. That's not me, but I do know how to use my skills, the things that I'm good at, to make a difference in the issues that are important to me. And then thinking about that class that I was in at Northeastern, I think that probably was the first time that I saw that it wasn't the things that I was sort of feeling in my life. Like, I know I don't feel good when I hear somebody use the N-word. Right. I know I don't feel good when I feel like I have professors targeting me for no reason, but I also didn't understand the systems that created those things generation after generation. And I didn't understand where I fit into that until I took that class. And in that class, that was also the first professor who made me feel smart.
Wow.
Yeah, I did fine in high school. I did perfectly fine. Like, I was a solid B student. Teachers liked me, but I always got the impression they just liked me because I'm sort of a likable, easy to get along with person. Mm-hmm. But that professor made me feel like I had something to say.
That's so impactful, because when students see themselves in their professors, when someone, sparks something in them, it's no telling where they can go. So let's fast forward to your work, because your work is exciting. So you have a master's degree in social work from the University of Pennsylvania, and I was wondering, like, all right, master's in social work, but
why did she take things like your courses that you took, where you focused on policy making, right, and strategic partnerships? And I was like, social work, partnership, you do you have like a really good understanding of people and in how to get them to be able to move systems to make changes? Did that come through with your master's degree education?
Yeah. And so social work as a field is, people tend to think of social workers as, I mean, on the bad days, people think of social workers as the lady who comes into your house and takes your kids. Like that's the bad vision of social workers. Or the good is the social worker who's like handing out food at the soup kitchen, things like that. But actually the field of social work is really, really vast. And so there are people who do clinical work, who are trained as clinical social workers, where they do one-on-one support, counseling, things like that, where it's like a direct level of support. But then there are also a lot of people who are trained in social work, and it relates to running nonprofit organizations, changing systems, and that's more the social work that I studied. So I really focused on how to lead in the nonprofit sector, how money flows in the nonprofit sector, specifically as you look at fundraising and philanthropy. And so that was the route that I ended up taking for a bunch of years. And but all sort of coming back to these core ways of knowing how people think, and understanding how a person thinks is impacted and influenced by their life experience, by their family, by their environment, by their community. And so it's sort of understanding the context of how all of that works together. So I am very much a social worker, even though I'm not a day-to-day counselor. You probably wouldn't want me to be. So, but I actually do use a bunch of my clinical skills as I talk to people about their jobs, and and really more I use my social work skills as I help organizations think about where they're trying to go, and where they fit, and what sort of people they're trying to attract to achieve those goals.
So just like looking at your resume and your LinkedIn profile, like you really moved up in nonprofits, right? Like working at Cities of Service, U.S. Fund, UN. How do you say that? Is it UNCF? UNICEF. I remember when I was little, they used to give us those little boxes at school.
That's right, exactly. Trick or treat for UNICEF, exactly.
Safe Horizons, City Year, New York. So how has those experiences led you in what you do now in coaching, and actually leading executive searches? How has your experience informed the actual work that you're doing and with those people that you're working with?
Well, the best thing is that I got to do, I've had the opportunity to do a bunch of different things in the nonprofit sector. So I did fundraising at UNICEF USA, or the US Fund for UNICEF, and at Safe Horizon. At Cities of Service, I was a chief of staff. So I got to think about how organizations build and grow and bring people in, and strategy. When I was at City Year, I did program work. So I was directly helping young people, specifically in after-school programs and in schools, but then also managing core members, 17 to 24-year-olds who were doing full-time community service. I was in charge of the work that they were doing too. So I've had the chance to look at the nonprofit sector from a lot of different lenses. So all of that brings me to this organization now where I work. I work for this company called Koya Leadership Partners. And what we do is help organizations, mostly nonprofit organizations, find their senior executives. So a nonprofit would hire us, Koya, to do a search and to go out and recruit a new chief executive officer or new executive director or new head of programs or head of fundraising. Because I have the experience of all of these different things, I understand the types of questions that people are asking. I understand the concerns that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, what keeps people up at night. And also, I really understand who knows who and how they interact with who and what their networks are and how to find other people. And so that's the part that I really love. And I came to Koya with a very, very clear commitment to and mission in changing the way the nonprofit sector looks, because I worked at all these different organizations that had really fantastic leaders And I saw that the people we were helping usually had black or brown skin, and the people who were making the decisions usually did not.
Right.
So it was really important to me to think about the future of the nonprofit sector and how can I help to change that. And so the work that I do at Koya and that we all do at Koya is very much about helping. It's not exclusively so, but certainly has a significant focus on helping to bring people of color and queer folks and women into leadership positions at nonprofit organizations.
That's super impactful.
I think so.
So you worked at some really big searches.
Yeah.
I mean, the Southern Poverty Leadership Conference. I mean,
Southern Poverty Law Center. Yeah.
Southern Poverty Law Center. I think I've got Martin Luther King on the brain. Move On.
Yeah.
BCS. That's Brooklyn Community Services, right?
Yeah, that's Brooklyn Community Services. That's right.
What were those searches like in terms of being able to get the right fit? And then how do you know that that person is the right fit? And then how do you get them to stay?
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I think I think a lot of it starts before the search starts. It's going into an organization and talking to the people who already work there, talking to the board of directors, and learning from them what's going great here. What do you love about it here? What's exciting for you? What are the opportunities on the horizon for you for the next 5 years? But then also having the really hard conversations. Why have people left? What are challenges? What keeps you up at night? What's hard for the junior staff, for the executive staff? And once we have all of that information and we piece it all together, and a lot of the work that I did, especially with those organizations that you named, was going in and talking to the staff. Mm-hmm. So the Southern Poverty Law Center, when we worked with them, they had about 500 staff members across the Deep South. So I traveled to I would spend time in Atlanta and in Montgomery and in large cities across the South, but then also in these tiny little sort of outlets. At the Southern Poverty Law Center, they had about 550 staff around the Deep South. So I traveled around in July and August to visit all of their sites with the team. I work as part of a team. We all work as part of a team, and we got in touch with all of the staff members and sat down with them, and we had hard conversations about what needed to change in the organization, but also what was so important about the work that they were doing. And then hearing all of that, we took it forward and we created a document that served as the holding place for all of those hopes and wishes and aspirations, and also for us to have a roadmap for who we were looking for. And then we start reaching out to a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds of people, and we make phone calls and we're emailing and using LinkedIn and all of this. And so when we have all of those conversations, we're hearing from people on the other side about what they're looking for. And so then it becomes a lot about matchmaking. Well, people say, I'm not interested, but I want to recommend my friend. Here's why you should talk to my friend. This is what makes them great. And then we start to go down paths and really spend a lot of time talking with people and learning from them about what's important to them in an organization. And that's what feeds into what makes them stay, is that when there's a right fit on both sides, then it's a match that works for the long term.
And is there any coaching involved to keep them there? Because I'm assuming that these people are coming in, they're coming in from a new outside into a new organization, don't really know about the culture, and they've got to watch and figure out and see who the players are and
Yeah, you're exactly right. So our work does not do much of that coaching. We do a little bit of it sometimes, but usually there's at that level, at the CEO level, often people are coming in with their own executive coaches that they've worked with for a few years.
Got it.
And so, and if they don't have that, then we are very happy to make recommendations and to introduce them to people. But that's not our skill set, because I think I'm one of 3 people at Koya who happen to have social work backgrounds, but a lot of people at Koya are recruiters by training. You know, what they know how to do is recruit. They don't necessarily know how to run a big nonprofit organization.
Okay.
So that's where it's helpful to have a coach who's been there. Like Serena Williams isn't going to have her tennis coach be somebody who hasn't actually played tennis before. You know, that's
True.
so yeah, that's not generally our go-to, but we do a little bit of coaching. Like I have a portfolio of coaching clients that I do work with who are figuring out what they want to do with their career path, and that's a much easier and more natural coaching portfolio for me.
And those are adults, right? Are they adults who are looking to go into a new career, trying to figure it out, just starting out?
Yeah. The people that are working with me and that work with our team on coaching are generally further along in their careers. They're out of college for 20 years. They've been in different jobs. They've done different things. For me, I almost exclusively work with Black women. Black women or women of color. Yeah, I think I have one client who's white, but otherwise they're all women of color. Because there's a lot of stuff that we have to think about as women of color going into job interviews, creating our materials or resumes and our letters of interest. There's a lot of ways that we have to think about how we show up, how we can be comfortable, how we have conversations, and how we make sure that we're showing up in an authentic way.
So I usually like to ask this at the end, but I think this is a great place. What advice would you give a young woman who is trying to navigate a workspace and not sure, should she straighten her hair? Should she keep it big? Should she have her loud personality? Should she dial it back? Should she pull out her, college voice? How do you navigate that and then still stay true to who you are and don't think that you're a sellout?
Yeah, that's a huge, and it's such an important question. So I think first is finding the place that's right for you. And that comes with options. Like the more options you can set up for yourself, the more opportunities you have to go into someplace and be like, this isn't going to work for me. I'm not going to work here. So that has to do with like doing more than you need to, working really hard, always being prepared, always being on time. All of those things give you options. And once you have options, then you've got a lot more flexibility and freedom. I would say for me, I realized not that long ago in my career, to be really honest, and I think that things are changing, which has made it a little bit easier now than it has been historically. But I realized if I walk into an office and everybody's wearing heels and stockings, it's not going to work. Like, it's just not going to work for me. And I think that those types of cues are really important. It's important to look around at people, and it's especially hard right now in COVID when you can't look around at too many people, but to see like who's there and how do they show up? The people who are taken seriously, how do those people show up? And then I think, especially for women of color, hair, I mean, we could have like a whole series of conversations about hair, right? And so I think that that's a big piece of it, is understanding like what's professional looking for me, like what makes me look professional, but also what makes me feel professional. I think that the older you get, the more leeway you have. And so a 20-year-old who's walking into an office as an intern or signing online on Zoom as an intern is going to have to prove themselves or prove herself in a very different way than a 40-year-old. And I think that's a real thing. I think that you can look at what's on the website of the organization, look at the language that they use, look at the people who are there. The other thing that I think is really, really key is finding mentors and connecting with them early on. And like look for the people of color who are in mid-level roles and leadership roles, connect with them, find a reason to talk to them. And I think it's really important to say, I'm looking for advice. Would you be willing to talk with me for 30 minutes and share some advice about your career? Help me understand how you got to where you are in your career. I see where you are. I really admire it and respect it. I'd like to learn more. And then what happens is those relationships, those people start to look out for you and start to pull you up. And I think that that is how people move up quickly in their careers. I know it's how I did. I know it's how other people have as well. That's those mentorships, mentoring relationships are very, very key. And I think that's where a lot of those nuanced norms get taught. Of like, here in this organization, it's okay for you, like, do your big earrings, do your big hair, do whatever you need to do, or like dial it back a little bit. You know, that's where when you find those people who are helping you with love because they want to help you grow.
That was perfect. Like, that was like really, really good advice. I needed that 20 years ago.
Thanks.
So I hear Koya has these ideas calls.
Yeah.
Please tell us about them.
So Ideas, Koya is just this great company because we get to show up as who we are. You know, it's this rare place. It's the first place I've ever worked where I got to figure out who I was because I was able to show up as who I was. And that evolved. I mean, that definitely evolved. And so one of the things that allows that is that we talk constantly about diversity, equity, and inclusion at Koya. I mean, it's something that's a huge part of what we're about and why people come to Koya. And so what we found starting back in 2016, this wasn't something that I created, but it was I'm sure you remember the summer of 2016. That's when police brutality was being videotaped in a way that it had not been before, right? And so we all remember that week of July where the videos just kept coming out of police or people murdering Black men, right? So we at Koya said, we need something. We need an outlet. We talk about race every single day, but we're not talking about the hard parts of race. And so we started with a sort of a task force around diversity, and we didn't really know what it was. And so we did that for a while, and we would have these conversations. And what evolved over the years is that about a year and a half ago, I was asked to take this on as like, go do something with these calls. We have something, we need to do something. So that's where the social work training came in. And that I do have the training in how to facilitate hard conversations. I know how to do that. So IDEAS stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And every month we have these conversations that are completely optional. Nobody needs to come. And yet, every month, about 50 people from across the country take time out of their busy schedules to join these calls.
Wow.
And the topics of conversation totally range. Sometimes it's about white privilege. Sometimes it's about things like difference, how we've experienced difference in our own lives.
Yeah.
It's just a way for people to connect and to talk and to talk about the way that these issues show up in our personal lives as well as our work lives. And because we have such an incredibly diverse staff at Koya, it helps the people who maybe think that their experience is an isolated one feel a little bit more connected in. And it gives voice, anybody at any level of the organization can speak up in those calls. We think of them not necessarily as safe spaces, but as brave spaces where people can say the hard things and the messy things. And we know that we're all there just to support each other and learn from each other. And that's been really, I think, a really special part of Koya. In addition, we have affinity groups too, where we are in identity-based groups that provide support to each other. So there's a Black and African American group. There's an LGBTQ group. There's an Asian American group. There's a white allies group. And so those are places that are also about providing support in more of a concentrated setting. Right. And I know when I've got hard things on my mind that I'm dealing with when it comes to race, I send a message to my peers in the Black African group. And I find incredible support from the things that they say to me that build me up, that help me on a hard day. And I think for the people who are at our firm at Koya who maybe aren't in senior level, senior as I am in the company, they get direct access to the people who are senior. They can say those hard things. They can build me up in the same way that I can build them up. We get to help each other along and teach and learn from each other. So those things are really important too. And I think those outlets, which are growing more and more popular and more frequent in organizations, are really, really valuable, especially for Black and brown young people who are trying to find their way in an organization.
I like the name of it. You said Black, African American, and African.
Yes.
I love that it actually shows that there's different ways of being Black, right?
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
we're not all African American.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Look at Koya on the front on the front lines with the right wordage.
We're working on it. We make mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes, but we also do a whole lot that's right. So we're trying.
So Melissa, how can we connect with you? How can young people connect with you if they want to ask you a question for 30 minutes and get some good Melissa advice?
So let's see. So the best thing to do is probably to check me out on LinkedIn. I keep my eye on LinkedIn a lot and get a lot of messages there and respond to those. So that's probably the best place. And I'm pretty easy to find because my last name is super uncommon. So LinkedIn is probably the best way. And then also I'm on Twitter. This is one of the things that our research team at Koya told me I needed to start tweeting and start following people and being on Twitter. And so I have a Twitter account and it's at BK Madzel. So at BK for Brooklyn, Madzel.
And we'll definitely put that in the notes. Melissa, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Ebony, for what you're doing. I can't tell you how much it inspires me that you are doing this work. It really does.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So some takeaways are, even our high achieving, got it all together high schoolers can benefit from guidance and career exploration in their college search process. We have to make sure the kids have the information to make the best college fit for themselves. 2, in your job search, you want to find a place that's a good fit for you. Study the culture. How do Black and Indigenous people of color show up? Think about what's professional for you and what feels professional for you. And 3, connect with mentors. Connect with mid-level people you want to be like. Ask them directly for advice, and they will help you with love. Don't we deserve love in the workplace? I think so. Thank you so much, Melissa. And again, welcome to the Liberated Success family. Folks, listen, connect with Melissa on LinkedIn. You will not be disappointed. All right. So as we approach this holiday season, I want to thank everyone for building and growing with Liberated Success. We appreciate you. And I want to let you know that we have a generous donation of $5,000, but we need to match it. We need to match it for our impact project, Liberated Problem Solvers, which is launching this spring. If you believe in this work and you want to help young people make a liberated career choice, this is your moment. This is your moment to be impactful. 75% of the funds raised will go directly in the hands of young people. The donation link is in the bio on IG, Twitter. It's the first comment on Facebook. And podcast listeners, you can click listener support. We appreciate you. Let's get this done. I know we could do it. All right. Thank you for watching and listening all the way to the end. All right, folks, we will save ourselves. Wear your mask, wash your hands, physically distance, and all Black Lives Matter. See you next week. Bye.